So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Paul CHEK.
All right, well listen, this is going to be probably a very different lecture than you might have expected to get at this conference, but the topic is high performance. And you can see in my title, anyone that really is achieving high performance is inherently high for man. Anyone that achieves high performance as a speaker, as a businessman, as an athlete, innately always evolves to wanting to help other people achieve that in their life. It's a natural spiritual progression that anyone that is successful goes through. We always want to share our successes. So high performance is the equivalent of being high for man. I chose this picture because in nature, it's high performance or death. Quite simple. This zebra has a choice. Set the world record in the half-mile run and hope he gives up, or it's a she, but hope she gives up, or be dinner, right? That's high performance. And Mother Nature's designed that way. She's designed to eliminate the weak and to perpetuate the strong, because her plan is to always create something more beautiful. She does not have any interest in perpetuating weakness, laziness, or sickness. That's our plan, i.e. human beings. We're the ones that started that game. And we have to take ownership of that game as well. So my learning objectives in this very short 90-minute lecture are to recognize the benefits and importance of a holistic approach to achieving high performance. There's lots of non-holistic approaches to achieving high performance, but they're always very pointed. So you can use drugs to achieve a performance level in a given sport, but it could come at the cost of your liver. It can come at the cost of relationships. It can change your life forever. So if your legacy is to maybe set a record in the bench press or to win a Stanley Cup, but that's all that you want your life to stand for, then many of the high-performance techniques that are being used today have some value. But if you want life after achievement, then you're going to have to think about a holistic approach to high performance. Okay? The question is, do you want to win the battle or win the war? Okay? We see all sorts of one-hit wonders. Somebody that, does well for a little while, then they're gone. There's all sorts of people that have done that. But the people that we really remember are people like Gretzky. People that were the best for a long time. And we always wonder, how do they do it year after year? Well, a lot of these people have mastered multiple areas of their lives, not just one. You'll see the people that are less interested in mastering more of their life typically turn to the quick fix approaches, because it takes responsibility, energy, and knowledge to master your life on multiple levels. We want to develop awareness of the subtle aspects and the gross aspects of man. Almost everything that goes on in medicine today, with the exception of modern energy medicine, is dealing purely with the physical body. Most of what coaches are doing and trainers are doing, with the exception of the more evolved coaches and trainers, is dealing with the physical body. How can I get you to run higher, jump faster? That's all physical stuff, unless you get into what is driving the vehicle, the body. Once you get into what's driving the vehicle and the body, you've got to get into subtle things, things you can't see. Unless you're a clairvoyant, you don't see me thinking right now. Right? You don't see my words, you hear them. In order to really achieve high performance, we also have to get into the unseen factors of any individual's life. And the unseen factors are harder to work with, because you can only work with them at the level that you yourself are developed. That's what puts the limiting factor on it. And when we start having coaches, trainers, therapists, and doctors that evolve themselves beyond the level of their clients and their athletes, then we will have more leadership, and we will see more records being broken with less drugs and less one-hit wonders. Okay? There's an old saying, it's ancient, you cannot give what you do not have. Right? Sadly, today, most athletes survive their coaches and their trainers and make their coaches and trainers famous, but it's because they're amazingly gifted genetically and they have very, very high levels of determination. But if you analyze, if you get someone like Charles Poliquin or myself or someone that's very skilled at analyzing programs at a high level, I'm sure if you took 20 of the top athletes' programs and put them in front of Charles, he would wonder how they survived that. So we want to appreciate man as a product of the terrestrial or the earthly environment and the extraterrestrial or cosmic environment. Now you may notice cosmic is spelled with a K. Cosmic with a C only speaks of the material universe, the Newtonian universe. Stars, dust, dirt, and rock. Cosmic with a K speaks to the noosphere, the mind, the biosphere, all that's alive. Cosmos with a K is the holistic approach to the cosmos, and that's a Greek, an ancient Greek approach. So it includes things that we see and do not see. So when I speak of the cosmos, I speak of it with a K because the mind is in the cosmos, emotion is in the cosmos, spirit is in the cosmos. Okay? Life. The difference between a dead animal and a living animal is life force. As I said yesterday, that's Eve. The difference between a dead body and a living body is life force. That's in the cosmos. If that wasn't in the cosmos, we wouldn't be in this room. So when we think of what created us, we've got to go beyond the earthly and into the cosmic, because the earth is only part of a very, very, very large system. But most people get so locked up in this earthly existence, they forget that we're just a speck in a large, large universe. As a matter of fact, current scientific research in astronomy mathematically has been calculated that there could be at least 100 billion solar systems capable of maintaining life exactly like Earth. So when they look at the mathematics of the universe, they say there literally, mathematically, could be 100 billion universes and solar systems just like ours. Excuse me, solar systems, not universes. Could be 100 billion solar systems with stars and planets that would maintain life like this. But they're so far away that they can't measure them and they can't get there yet. But the point is, there's plenty of science to show that the chances of us being the only ones is almost non-existent. This is a mandala. I built this mandala because there's so much confusion in the health and exercise world about what I do. You wouldn't believe all the funny stories I hear about what Paul CHEK does. Oh, he's the Swiss ball guy. Oh yeah, he's the medicine. He's the... So when people say that, I go, well, that's the video they watched, right? It takes 5.5 years for me to train my students to where I think they're effective in a health or exercise environment. And it's 5.5 intense years, and each year the training gets more comprehensive and more complex. So until somebody is a level 4 in my program and an NLC 3, nutrition and lifestyle coach, they're like a soldier that's partway through basic training. They're not ready to do battle yet. They're practicing. Okay? So I put this together. It's on my website, and I'm going to give you a brief introduction to it today. But this model encompasses in one diagram everything I teach in 5.5 years. And I'm going to show you in the next few minutes what I look at in order to help anybody achieve high performance. The first thing that you got to know in order to achieve high performance for anybody is you can't do high performance to somebody. You get that? You can't do high performance to someone. If your coach wants you to be the national champion and you don't want to be the national champion, your coach is pissing in the wind. You have got to want it. And you as therapists, doctors, trainers, you can want your client to lose fat, you can want your client to run faster, jump higher, and you can want them to lift better and perform better. But if they don't want it worse than you, then you run the grave risk of hinging your identity on your success with somebody that isn't as interested in your success as you are. So make sure, step number 1, that your client, your athlete, your patient is as committed to achieving a common goal as you are, or all the tricks in the book will not work. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to break the diagram into pieces for you and show you what I look at and what I train my higher level practitioners to look at. I would encourage you to keep an open mind. You don't have to believe anything I say. I could be plumb full of shit, and a lot of people think I am. I don't really care what people think. If I cared what people think, I'd have never made it this far. If I had a nickel for every time someone told me I should go to school and get a degree, I wouldn't make anything out of myself. I'd be so rich right now, I would be in the Bahamas with 10 or 12 hot-looking chicks and a few Ferraris. Okay? I decided to get there this way instead of collecting nickels. At the top of the diagram, we have the source of creation. Now, if you don't like the word God, I don't care what you put in there. I don't have any attachment to it. It's just a common word that everybody understands. Call it the Creator. Call it ultimate potential. Call it Wu Chi. Call it Madonna if you want. I don't care. Whatever works for you. But everything came from something. And if you don't figure that out, then you're really in trouble because you don't know why you're here. You don't know what life's about. Now, there's a lot of stigma around what's called the Holy Trinity. How many of you are familiar with the Holy Trinity? Raise your hand if you know what that is. Okay, so the Holy Trinity, Father, God, Son, Jesus Christ, Holy Ghost, Spirit, right? So energy, body, Creator. So Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Christians are taught to believe that Jesus is the direct Son of Father, but that's one philosophy from one group of people, and that philosophy came out of a religion that spawned out of several other religions, and the person that they're talking about never left any written documentation whatsoever, and the first writings from so-called Jesus didn't appear for 40 to 70 years after his death. So anything that's so-called said that Jesus said is a parable. So what I want you to do here is I want to look at some scientific correlations, and I want to look at some world religion correlations, because one of the common things that I have to deal with athletes is fear of success. I shouldn't have money because a lot of people think Jesus was broke, for example. So they're raised in the Christian religion believing, oh, you shouldn't accumulate money, you shouldn't have wealth, that's gluttonous, you're a pig. If you have a bunch of money, you got to give it to the church. So they do, then that stresses the hell out of them because they're working hard and giving it all away, right? Well, that's sad when I hear that, and I hear it a lot. So I have to tell them a little story about a man named Peter Daniels. I don't know if you've ever heard of Peter Daniels. He's one of the richest men in the world. He's from Australia. And he got so sick and tired of running into that same problem, he hired 5 of the world's top theologians to investigate Jesus' net worth. If you've studied the life of Jesus, you know that when he was born, the wise men came, and what did they give Jesus? Frankincense and myrrh and gold. So Peter Daniels hired 5 of the world's top theologians. He said, I don't care how much money it takes, and I don't care how much time it takes. I want to know what Jesus' net worth was. It took them 5 years of investigation. When they came back, they concluded through every means available to them that the approximate value of Jesus at net worth at that time was equivalent to 240 million US dollars. So as Peter Daniels says, if Jesus wanted a new camel, it came straight off the showroom floor. Okay? If he wanted to part the seas, he could afford to, and if he wanted to feed 5,000, it was no problem. Okay? I bring these types of things up not because I have an attachment to any religion. As I'm going to show you in this lecture, there's a lot of dogma and there's a lot of beliefs that are disempowering that hold people back. But people don't spend the time and energy to investigate, to see what is real and what is true, and ask questions. And I've had many patients in front of me and athletes of all types, and when I said, why didn't you ask the preacher that? Why didn't you ask your mother, your father, or whoever was supposedly known? And many of them say I did, but they said, that's not important, or I'll tell you tomorrow, and it got put off. So with that in mind, let's look at some facts that you just can't avoid. In the Trinity, the source of all has a relative potential of neuter. 0, not positive, not negative. No potential. Okay, no polarity, all potential. Okay? So some of the scientific or correlating words from an atomic perspective, that's the equivalent of a neutron in an atom. Mathematically, what you call God is the equivalent of a zero, as I'll show you later. God is all potential, is absolute. So if you look at an EKG, you know when someone's getting an electrocardiogram, when someone dies, what is it called? Flatline. So you're not positive, you're not negative, you don't have a heartbeat, you've entered the absolute. You understand that? You don't have a relative experience. A heartbeat is a relative experience. So is breathing. Inhale. Yang. Positive. Excitation. Catabolic. Exhale. Yin. Negative. Accumulative. Dark. Womb. Right? So those are correlating factors. So idea. The concept of idea from which comes creation is held in the potential. If you look at a bar magnet, you got a north end and a south end, and what's in the middle? Potential. You split that magnet in half, you got a north end, a south end potential. You can do that indefinitely until you run out of atoms. Okay? So the point is there's always potential and there's always polarity in the created universe. Matter is the equivalent of proton. In the Holy Trinity, it's a positive relative charge. Now this can go either way, but I want to show you how it works so that you can understand where a lot of people's heads get screwed up. Positive proton, positive levity. So sunlight is the equivalent of positive relative to the earth. Earth would be negative relative to the sun. The earth creates our gravity and the sun creates our levity. Plants always grow to the sun, don't they? You ever taken a plant and moved it in your house? What does it do within a day or two? Turns and faces the sun, right? Because it knows where the levitational energy is. All plants and all trees grow toward the sun. The sun is a levitational force. It might interest you to know that there's a reason that our spine is vertical, not horizontal like an animal. I might hit on that later for you. Inhalation, positive. Consciousness is the equivalent of positive in the Holy Trinity. Future. What's going to happen tomorrow is the equivalent of positive. Atom is the equivalent of positive. On the negative end, you have electron, gravity, exhalation, and subconsciousness, and the past, and you have Eve, or the womb of creation. Eve, negative, Adam, positive. So there you have the Holy Trinity. Father, Adam, Eve, and from Adam and Eve, see the little figure of a man in there? Can you see that from back there? That's the archetypical man. So that's the blueprint, the cosmic blueprint that creates what you and I know as man. Okay? So once the energy of the creative force passes through, here you have 4 ether forces. Now the ether was tested by Michelson and Morley. I don't know if you remember the Michelson and Morley experiment. They tried to determine what was holding everything in place. Because Einstein said, wait a minute, we can't have planets and stars just hanging out in space. There's got to be something holding them up. So Michelson and Morley could not prove the existence of ether. And so most scientists changed their belief to think it didn't exist. But the reality of it is they couldn't disprove it either. And if you keep up with quantum physics or quantum mechanics, you'll find that right now, all over the world, there are very serious investigations going on by high-level scientists because there's too many indicators now that the ether exists. If you want a name, look up the name Laszlo. He's got a book called Science in the Akashic Field. Gives a very comprehensive explanation of the ether forces that hold the whole universe together. Within the ethers are 4 ethers, so you've got the main ether force, and it has 4 subdivisions: air, fire, water, and earth. You might remember those as the Aristotelian elements. How many of you studied philosophy and know who Aristotle was? Okay, so quite a bit of you. Those are the Aristotelian elements, but they have forces that create them. You remember last night I told you there's an electromagnetic field around the planet? And I said the electrical field works at a 90-degree angle to the magnetic field. And plants grow like they do because they follow the electric field. And the electric field is created between the potential in the soil and the potential in the rocks and the sun. Do you remember that? So you had soil and water and plant body as negative. And you had sun, light, and paramagnetic rock as positive, and that creates an electromagnetic potential, and the electrical field literally is the driving force that lifts plants and human beings upward toward the sun or in evolution. So you have an electromotive force driving evolution. Once you pass through here, you're into the created realm. So everything that exists that you can count is in the created realm. If you can count it, it exists. Einstein said, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. Okay? That's what the Buddhists call a koan, but you can think about that for a while. Now, in Chinese philosophy, just so you know, I want to give you as many perspectives as I can. I'm going to give you some Hindu perspective. I can give you some Islamic perspective. I can give you Christian perspective. One of the most dangerous things to do is not move around the world in your thinking. Otherwise, you get stuck in a box, and that's the fastest way to end up in a war. And if you are in a hurry to have your head blown off, then I'm sure that Uncle Sam has a job for you. Okay? So what the Chinese call, what you know as Tai Chi, you know that symbol, don't you? That's the Tai Chi symbol. You know that, right? Okay? Well, Tai Chi is the merger of yin and yang. Female, negative, Eve, yin. Male, positive, yang, Adam. And those are potentials that emerge out of the absolute. So here is the absolute, the all-knowing. When you have yin and yang emerge out as separate qualities, you enter the field of mind and time. How many of you have noticed, just in your own observation through studying basic science, that every single thing in the universe is moving? Did you know that? Can anyone tell me anything that's not moving? Yep.
Potential energy?
Okay, potential energy, and that's there. Okay, so if you're talking about, are you talking about potential energy in here?
In the universe.
If it's in the universe, it's moving. Okay, so if you study quantum mechanics, when they go down below the atomic level, what do they get to? Chaos. And what did Einstein and other people show? Anytime you think, it orders chaos. But below chaos, it's like static on a radio. It's moving so fast they can barely measure it. And if you try to measure the position of something, you can't know the speed of it. Any one variable excludes the other. So in the created universe, everything's moving. If you think the chair's not moving, it's on the planet's moving. So everything in the created universe is moving. And the reason it's moving is because it has to move to give you an experience of time. If it wasn't moving, what happens right now if the world stops moving? Time stops, doesn't it? Right? But isn't it interesting that a year here on Mars is about 247 years, right? So what we call time is strictly an Earth-based concept. Time on every other planet or every other star is completely different than it is here. The only point I want to get across, though, is that once you leave the field of the absolute, or what the Chinese call the uncarved block. You get that? The uncarved block? That means if I hand you a block of wood or a piece of clay, you can make anything out of it. So instead of using the word God, the Chinese used Tao, the way, or the uncarved block. Wu Qi is what the Chinese would use. Instead of saying God, they would say Wu Qi or the Tao or the absolute. That just means the potential to do anything, to be anything, to accomplish anything, to achieve high performance. Believe me, whatever's in there is all about high performance. That's why the zebra has to run like hell. Because it was set up as a high performance system. And I'll show we're actually set up as a high performance system too. As a matter of fact, we're so high performance, as I'll show you, we get to create exactly what we want. Exactly. You want a happy relationship, you can create one. You want a shitty one, you can create one. If you're unhappy right now, you earned that too. Okay? So here we see a Chinese or a Taoist philosophy to go with your Christian philosophy. But the point that I want to give you right now is that what you know as mind and time begins there. Above that, you're into a realm where rishis, wise men, and avatars go to in meditative states. And if you think, oh, that's a bunch of foo-foo crap, who can tell me when the atom was first identified? and described as having a neutron, a proton, and an electron. Anyone know? Several hundred years ago, it was identified by a Greek philosopher way before they ever had microscopes, to the T. And there's many, many things like that. As a matter of fact, I was watching a DVD by a quantum physicist, and he said something that struck me. He said, I'm sure that any day now, at the end of one of my mathematical equations, I'm going to find a rishi sitting there with his legs crossed. If you don't know what a rishi is, it's an Islamic wise man. You know why he said that? Because every time he makes progress in quantum mechanics and quantum physics, he keeps finding out that everything the wise men said that did it through meditation and Tibetan monks and all these people is true. And you go, how the hell do they know this stuff? Because they have the ability to move up into the source of all, where all knowledge exists. Study the life of Walter Russell, for example. The guy had a 4th grade education. He identified 2 elements on the periodic table before anyone even knew about them. 2 people were given scientific awards, the Nobel Peace Prize actually, that stole his information and later apologized to him. Study Walter Russell, you'll see an example of what I mean. I could give you many others. If it hasn't gotten interesting yet, hang on. Like I said earlier, if this stuff sounds crazy to you, then well, I'm telling you a great story, so enjoy yourself, right? But I'll tell you this, there's a reason I'm up here. I'm not up here because I do a good job shining Ken Kanakin's mag wheels, okay? Now, let's get serious. Mind is the builder. If you read the life of Edgar Cayce, study the life of Edgar Cayce. He was a clairvoyant. He was a person that did readings on people for doctors. Many of the top doctors in the world used Edgar Cayce when they had sick people and they wanted to know what was wrong with them. They couldn't figure them out. Edgar Cayce did over 2,000 medical readings on people with a 100% accuracy. Edgar Cayce clearly defines cases in his biography of experiments that he did to prove that the mind is the builder. I won't go into them right now, but you already know it intuitively. I'll just show you what's going on. This is skipping some steps, but I want to show you this right now. What you tune into, you tune your mind to any thought. If you want to get up out of your chair, you've got to think, get out of the chair, don't you? Try not getting out of the chair without thinking about it. I want to see it happen. Okay? Unless you're sleepwalking or having a seizure, it's not going to happen. Okay? So you always have to tune your mind into anything to get anything to happen. Right? No matter what you do. If you want to drive 70 and the speed limit's 50, you got to say, oh, screw it, I'll drive 70. Right? It's always a choice. The instant you tune your mind to anything, it's no different than dialing somebody's cell phone number. Right? You can dial 760-477-2620. You'll ring my institute, because that's the frequency that the phones on my institute resonate to. So the instant you tune your mind into anything, you are a cosmic antenna, and you attract anything on that vibrational level to yourself, exactly like a radio station, exactly like a walkie-talkie, exactly like a cell phone. This thing right here is a radio. It's tuned into a frequency, and it's tapped into that camera, and it's on that. So everything I say is sent out by this amplifier on the frequency that it's tuned to, and then my voice is recorded on there. Your mind is exactly that way. Whatever you think, you tune into, and when you think about anything, if you think about it frequently enough or long enough, you energize it, and you actually attract matter to it. You attract matter to it. How many of you know how chrome is put on a bumper? You know, how do they do it?
Electron transfer.
They use electron transfer. So they create an electrical current, and electricity is light, slowed down, or it's actually not slowed down, it moves at the speed of light. Thought moves at the speed of light. If you think any thought, here's a wicked statistic for you. Ready for this one? This is some scary shit now. Every thought you think makes it around the globe 7 times a second. So if you're thinking shit about people, that guy's a real asshole, blah, 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 that's wrapping itself around the world 7 times a second. And you're influencing everybody in the whole planet with that thought. Now, that might seem, oh, well, you know, blah, blah, that's not true. But if you think about it, it's really important, okay? So what I want to show you here is that the nervous system is the vehicle for the mind. The human nervous system is the vehicle for the mind. And look at what I've got for you right here at a Gray's Anatomy. This shows you the neurovascular plexus. There's a sympathetic plexus. And every single plexus in your body, every hormonal gland and every nerve plexus taps into different parts of your body. And check this out, right out of Gray's Anatomy. You see what this diagram shows you? These are single cells, ladies and gentlemen. Single cells. You've got about 100 trillion of them in your body, and you have a nerve ending that touches every single cell in your body. So any thought you think, remember your brain is part of your mind. You use your brain to tune in. That's what it is. It's a tuning system. Let me show you how it works. Watch carefully right there at the edge of this picture. Your body is constructed very, very much like a plant. Remember, we've moved anthropometrically through the entire biological kingdom. So if you want to see a correlate to how your nervous system works, take a bulbar plant and flip it upside down, right? So you see my plant turned upside down. The human brain is like the bulb. It's the root system, and it drapes down. So all your nerve endings are like the roots draping down through your body, and your solar plexus is the root plexus that extracts the energy and information from the soil. Solar means sun. Solar plexus means sun plexus. That's the plexus that takes the energy from your gut and distributes it through your body. That's why if you have screwed up digestion, you always are going to have a screwed up thinking process, because the mind is the engine of thinking, and if you don't digest, your solar plexus can't distribute the energy effectively. So as your health goes down, your capacity to think goes down. As your capacity to think goes down, your capacity to create what you want goes down, and the next thing you know, you feel stuck. Okay? That's not high performance. That's low performance. So your body is like the stalk, and the flower is actually the crown of the body. So the metaphor basically works root system and body as you see it here. Okay? So the question you got to ask yourself is, well, what do I want? Because any thought is a mechanism by which you've tuned your consciousness into something. Okay? How many of you, for example, have thought, you know, I really need to talk to Bob or somebody, and the phone rang, and it was them? These kinds of things, the more tuned you get, the more often that happens, you'll see. How many of you have walked up to the golf ball and before you even swung the club, you knew it was going to be a shitty shot? And you were right. Okay, so let me tell you how the scientific method is supposed to work. I'm going to show you how the scientific method works. And then I'm going to show you what happened in religious and spiritual investigation. And I'm going to show you the #1 problem that I have to work with people on that are sick and unhealthy, and even professional athletes. If I told you the names of professional athletes that I've helped with these kinds of problems, it would shock you. I can't do that for patient confidentiality, but let me tell you, at the very, very highest levels of athletic performance. And I'm a consultant to a lot of professional sports teams. Most of you don't know that, but I work all over the world in lots of sports. And when they call me, it's not because they're having a good time. Right? When my phone rings, it's because there's problems. So the scientific method, if any of you have been involved in science or have a degree in a science-related field, you'll recognize this pattern here. Scientific investigations always begin with preconceptions. The scientist always has a conception, and he says, well, let's see if we can identify the pattern. That develops a hypothesis. The hypothesis then leads to a prediction. Then you observe the experimental data. You do your research, and you observe the experimental data, and you make a decision as whether or not the pattern is there. So what do you see? You see, well, we gave vitamin C to 75 people who had colds, and X number of percentage of them got better, X number of percentage had no difference, and X number of percentage felt worse, right? So if the percentage of people that got better was 75%, you could say, well, the pattern's fairly reliable, 75%. If it's 90%, wow, that's amazing. Vitamin C for a cold's good stuff. So that's the scientific method. Now, spiritual investigation used to be done exactly that way. If you study Gnosticism, who knows what Gnosticism, anyone not know what Gnosticism is? Raise your hand if you don't know what it is. Okay, Gnosticism means knowledge. Prior to the formation of Christianity, there were many Gnostic traditions. Gnostic just means sharing knowledge. So in Gnosticism, prior to the point at which people put together a manual, you must do this on this day, right? What's December the 25th? Who was born on December the 25th? Jesus Christ. Raise your hand if Jesus Christ was born on December 25th. Do you agree with that? That's right, he wasn't, right? Most people think that. Most people think Christmas is Jesus' birthday. It's been proven that that's several months off. It might even be as much as 6 years off. Right? But you got to study to find this stuff out. So what do people walk around doing? They think that December 25th was the day Jesus was born, but they don't investigate, don't ask questions, so everybody just moves like sheep, celebrates Christmas, and the people, Walmart makes billions of dollars, and that's the whole thing. It's a big game, you see. Now, I'm not being disrespectful to Jesus, I'm just saying that wasn't when he was born. But you got to look at it to know, okay? So, here's what I'm going to show you. When you go through this spiritual investigative process, you get to the observation of experimental data, you meet on Sunday or Monday or Saturday, whatever religion you are, and what the Gnostic traditions did is they all sat in a room like this, and they did exactly what we're doing at this conference. What are we doing here? Sharing. How many of you have shared ideas in the hallways between lectures? Isn't that amazing? Is that exciting? You learn stuff from someone else, they learn stuff from you, and you leave here, you go, wow, gotta go try that. That's so cool. Never thought of that. Right? Because Ken Kanakin put this conference on in the spirit of evolution of the health and exercise industry, didn't he? Do you think Ken sat around and said, I really want to keep these suckers locked up. I've got to figure out a way to scare the hell out of them so they pay me every month, and I want to make sure nobody does anything different but what I want to do, and that way I can get rich, right? That's not the philosophy at all that's going on here. The philosophy is, what are some preconceptions? Right? What's the name of the conference? Society of Wellness Integrated Specialists. What does the word society mean? A collection of people. And what do? We come here and we have some preconceptions. We have identified patterns. We each have a hypothesis. We make predictions. We observe the data. Where's Robert Rokowski? I saw him come in. You got tons of data, don't you? I know you do. I hear you talk about it all the time. He's got data. And he says, well, that's a good pattern or it's not a good pattern. I'm going to move on. Then he gets on the phone with somebody that knows a lot, like Jeffrey Bland, and he starts sharing. And he says, oh my God, I haven't identified that pattern. And you see, so what you get is a spiral. What we're doing here is we're creating energy vortexes and we're tuning our consciousness into new and useful information. But what they did with the beginning of the Roman Catholic Church and what happened with Islamic and all the Abrahamic religions especially, is they said all this sharing stuff's got to go. It's really a pain in the ass because every time people start sharing, I got to keep changing the damn rule book. Somebody comes back and says, oh, this works too. That works too. You don't need to come to church on Sunday. It doesn't work for me. What? Say, we got to control the troops here, right? So what did they do? They said, got to stop that. We got to close the loop. Right? So what do we have now? We got a book called the Bible. It's 2,000 years old. Let me tell you, if you took your car to get a tune-up and the mechanic whipped out a 2,000-year-old manual for a Chariot, would you get nervous? Okay, dude, that is not a manual for my BMW. Right? What are you doing with that? Right? So we have got to evolve our thinking. We've got to ask questions. We've got to be intelligent about this stuff. We have got to maintain the scientific method. That means keep your mind open, ask questions, find people that have identified patterns, and study them and collect data, and discuss things and grow. And remember, not everything that can be counted counts. As soon as you start putting up a scientific study, that means you're excluding all sorts of things. We create studies so we, simple-minded little creatures, can study them. I've had many a conversation with university professors about the weaknesses in their study design. Many of them, and I hear this over and over again. Yeah, Paul, everything you say is correct, but, what did I say but means yesterday? It means ignore everything I've said up to this point. Yes, Paul, we agree with your statements, but we can't run studies that complex. Our students could never carry them out. Oh, so what you're saying is we make the studies nice and simple so a bunch of young bubble gum chewing, beer drinking, dope smoking kids can do them, and then you publish that shit and people argue with me in my lectures, and I got 22 years of clinical experience fixing what you guys haven't got a clue what to do with. Is that what you're calling science? No, that's not science. That's science made easy to boost people's egos, to keep papers out there, to keep people reading crap. If you want to find out the truth, you got to go after people that study and are serious and are good and don't get paid to keep people busy doing nothing. Okay? That means you got to go after people that are interested in sharing and learning. And those are people that are practitioners. Let me give you an example of exactly what I mean. I was asked recently in England by the London Times, who has interviewed me on a number of occasions. They said, Paul, if you were put in charge of health and education for the entire United Kingdom, what would you do different? Well, was that an interesting situation? I said, well, the first damn thing I'd do is I'd pass a mandatory law that nobody in this entire country could give a lecture on anything to do with health or exercise or medicine unless they were wearing a G-string. So that everybody could see the results of their diatribe. Right? If I was standing up here right now, you'd say, well, this guy might be crazy, but whatever the hell he's doing works. If you went to the gym with me, like Matt Nickel and a lot of these guys have, you know that whatever I eat, whatever I do, it works. And if you interviewed my patients, you'd say, wow, this guy's stuff works. I can't understand it, but it works. So the first thing we got to do is open up the scientific method, and we got to get rid of people that are talking a bunch of shit that they've memorized out of textbooks and that they can't even practice themselves. If you can't walk the talk, get the hell out of the kitchen. That's what I say. And keep the loop open, because as soon as you close the loop, we stop learning together. High performance is an open-ended project, isn't it? How many of you have found out about an idea or a technique or a training method and used it and it worked for a while? You ever had that? Raise your hand if you've had that happen. Then you had to change, right? Human beings are all about change. Let me tell you something. Listen carefully. Human beings are all about change. Energy equals changeability. You get that? Energy equals changeability. What that means is the more healthy you are, the more vital you are, and the more intelligent you are, the more capacity you have to adapt to any environment. That is changeability. Have you noticed that shit doesn't change much? Incas, gone. Romans, gone. Egyptians, gone. Should I keep going? Why? Because they all did the same shit. Used everything up, put gold all over the wall, treated people poorly, went to war with each other, and disappeared. Who's next? Let me tell you something, folks. As soon as you close the loop, you terminate society. Because when you close the loop, people stop growing. When you suppress people, they stop growing. When you suppress yourself, you no longer have high performance, because high performance is a constant open loop. It's constantly learning, constantly sharing, constantly adapting. And if any of you do Tai Chi, Qigong, or yoga, or meditate, or pray, you're a different person every time you do it. That's scientific fact. You lock yourself into the same pattern. Remember this. More of the same plus more of the same equals. You don't need to be a genius. Now, here's the source of a hell of a lot of pain, discomfort, misery, unhappiness, and lost performance. I can't even tell you how many people I've had to counsel over this. The whole concept of Adam and Eve, it just screwed the whole world up. Everybody thinks we're fallen. Oh my God, the banjo goes. Well, look at this. Remember my diagram? Turn it upside down. And what do you have? You have the tree of good and evil. What's the snake doing? Eating his tail. That's a Gnostic symbol. That symbol shows up in Gnosticism. It shows up in alchemy. You know what alchemy is? It's the science of converting other metals into gold and converting from one substance to another, right? Alchemy is now what you know as organic chemistry or molecular chemistry. That grew out of alchemy, that process, okay? When the snake eats his tail, that means life is eating life. You all have to eat things to survive, right? Unless you're a breatharian, and then you're eating little creatures that you can't see anyhow, right? So, the process of life eating life. Here, look what you see. If you've got that on an EKG, what does it mean about you? You're alive, right? When you get down here, you flatline. So what you know biblically is the Garden of Eden is everything above the point at which yin and yang exist. Once yin and yang exist, the Garden of Eden is on. The show is on. Yogananda says this is the greatest show in the universe, and I think he's right. So your creative forces literally project the image and the experience of relativity into the cosmic sphere. And in here, I'll show you what that means in a minute. But the tree of good and evil, if I do this, this will happen. If I do, if I've got this much money, I'm a bad person. If I don't give this much away, I'm a bad person. If I have sex with her, I'm going to go to hell. If I don't, I'm going to go to hell. If I don't stay in this sick pathological relationship because my wife and I have grown apart, I'm going to burn in hell, but I'm in love with this other woman, and even though I know I'm supposed to be married for the rest of my eternity, because that's what I said at my wedding vows, and even though I'm fighting with my wife all the time and teaching my kids how to behave like absolute idiots, I'm going to stick to it because I blah, blah, blah. So what do you get? A bunch of unhappy people that chase their tails in a circle, and those, my friends, are many of them athletes that can't achieve. Why? Because they've got a weight on their back, a rucksack full of emotional, mental, and spiritual bricks that are heavier than anything they're lifting in the gym. And it causes pain and dysfunction, and all the pills you put in their mouth won't get rid of Adam and Eve, won't get rid of the tree of good and evil. The only thing that gets rid of it is absolutely understanding, knowledge. Charles Poliquin said, knowledge is power. That is serious shit. I'll take it one step level. Applied knowledge is power. So let's look at the facts. Adam and Eve, they're just polarities, it's just potential. Everything in the universe is moving. If there was no Adam and there was no Eve, nothing would be moving. We wouldn't be here. The whole thing would stop, zap, like pulling the plug on a projector. Zip, end the movie. The whole thing's moving because it creates our experience. That's what we're doing. In the field of mind is all possibilities. Every idea or thought you could possibly have already exists in the mind field of the absolute. If it's moving, it's relative. So no matter how good you are, no matter how fast you are, no matter how strong you are, it's only as good as your last performance, isn't it? Otherwise, why do we keep doing it? We keep trying to better ourselves because everything we do is relative. The best sex you ever had is only the best until you have better. The best food you ever had is only good until you have better. The best anything, it's all relative. Relative to what? Right? If you think you're a great athlete, but you live in a town of 40,000 people, you're going to get a hell of a shock when you go to the regional championships, aren't you? You understand that? I used to be a boxer. I grew up in a little tiny town. I could beat the shit out of most guys in my town, but when I went to big tournaments, I went, holy, this is scary. There's guys that can hit as hard as me here. Them heavy bags hit back. That's a whole new experience, right? It's all relative. My performance was only good until I got a better competitor. Your toughest competitor, the toughest competitor you're ever going to meet, you can meet now in the bathroom in that shiny piece of glass. That's your toughest competitor. When you can align yourself with who and what you are and stop being dogmatic and judging yourself and realize, here's a little mathematical concept for you left-brainers that think this spiritual stuff's a bunch of fluffy shit. Let's go mathematical. Let's go way left brain here. 0 is the womb of all numbers, isn't it? To get to 1, what do you have to come from? To get to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, anything, to get to anything countable, to get to something, you had to first come from no thing. How's it any different in your life? Okay? So most of my athletes and patients are worried that they're being judged. Oh, if I do this, I'm going to go to hell. If I do that, blah, blah, blah. Who's going to judge you? Oh, God. Oh, is that right? Is that right? Well, how does something in the absolute that has no relative experience? Any judgment is a relative experience. You understand that? Have you ever noticed that no matter what you think is right, someone will disagree with you? That's why they say opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. No matter what you think is right, someone else is going to disagree with you. So all judgments are in the relative. That means it's not of the Godhead. It can't be. In the Godhead, the source of all it is all potential. The only one that can judge is you. The only one that can accept somebody else's judgment is you. That's why I don't give a shit what you think about me. My job is to tell you what I know to be true. And the reason I'm here is because I got good enough results that people say, hey, what the hell did you do that? Well, half the time I don't know how I did it. But I keep looking and I keep asking. That means open, right? So the reality of it is there cannot be judgment in the realm of the Godhead because the Godhead has no relativity. It can't judge. All judgments, remember this, write this down. This is some serious shit now. I can say those words because God invented them. Or they wouldn't be here. All judgments are unmet needs. Stew on that. So, these are the symbols of the zodiac. So you've got all your astrology symbols. Those are basically symbologies for creative forces and constellations. So if you look up each of the symbols, you'll find that they relate to a known physical star constellation. Okay? In astrology, they don't necessarily correlate so much directly to the constellation as much as they correlate to the energetic influences coming from that constellation, right? So let me give you an example of an energetic influence. Does the sun have an energetic influence on us? It's a star, isn't it? So any star or solar body that can project light to us has the potential to have an influence. The moon glows at night. What's it glowing? Does the moon glow from the inside? It's reflecting sunlight and starlight. Okay? So every one of these constellations has been proven by science to emit measurable starlight that hits our sphere, and the human body is said by wise men and rishis to have been created by the cosmic influences. That's why almost all metaphysical literature says you are a model of the universe. Have you heard that before? You are everything in the universe. You're a hologram of the universe. Okay? So what I want to show you here is in Hindu philosophy, each 7 years of our life, we go through a growth and development challenge, and there is a psychological lesson to be learned, a spiritual lesson to be learned in 7-year phases. Here's a little interesting factoid for you. Science shows that your body replaces every single one of its cells every 7 years. You are a new person, top to bottom, head to toe, tooth to anus every 7 years. And you can be someone different every 7 years. People say to me all the time, man, your stuff has changed so much. But better. If my stuff ain't changing, that means I'm on ice. Okay? So these cosmological forces are projecting light to us. What's in light? How many of you have a CD player? Right? So what is it that reads that disc? A laser. Light. That's light encapsulated information. Sunlight. It tells everything what to do in the whole planet. How long can this planet last without sunlight? If the sun is immediately shut off now, how long do you have to live? 8 minutes. You've got 8 minutes and this will be a block of ice. There will be pure yin, frozen. So you have to understand these, there's energies that are influencing us. Any woman in the room has already got a full-on sense of lunar influences. And her husband does too. Okay? So what you see is there's a lesson to be learned in 7-year blocks if you follow the plan. Once you get to 42 years of age and learn your lesson about how to be an effective creator, you then go back down, and the second half of our genetically programmed life is spent practicing. So the first lessons you learn are the teaching. The second lessons you learn are that of a master. You get challenged at each level as a teacher. You understand that? So you're learning to be a leader, basically was what that shows. You learn how to teach, and then you become a teacher, and to be a good teacher, you got to be challenged, don't you? That's why I stay and answer questions. Were you here last night? I always stay and answer questions as long as I can, because I need to be challenged or it's no fun for me. Okay? So that's what Eastern philosophy shows, is that we evolve. Now, you might think, oh, God, this guy's so full of shit, all this fluffy Hindu chakra crap. Okay, good. Maybe you ought to do some homework once in a while. Here's the research of William A. Tiller, one of the most famous scientists in the world, Stanford University. He, among several others, have scientifically, undisputably documented that this whole Hindu philosophy is live, real, it exists, and it can be proven scientifically and mathematically. And here he gives you all the math. If you want to read it, you can read his book called Science and Human Transformation by William A. Tiller. Now, it might interest you to know that these chakras, these energy vortexes that collect all this information, feed directly into your acupuncture meridians. So I'm going to show you how it works in a minute, but I want you to know that those acupuncture meridians and organs are tapped into the system. So just like your cell phone has parts in it, these are the parts of your cosmic sending and receiving system. Each organ, each gland, those are all parts of a complex system that communicates with the universe. Does anyone know what that is? I'd be really impressed if anyone knows what that is. Raise your hand if you think you know. Yeah?
An Aboriginal painting?
That's you're very close. It's an Aboriginal painting. It's an Aboriginal hunting map. That is a map written by an Aboriginal hunter so his fellow tribesmen know where to find meat. You know why it looks like that? Because the Aboriginals see energy. They don't look at the landscape, they see the energy emanating from the plants and from the earth. They see chakras and vortexes. That is a map like you and I would use to get to the airport, but it's written in energy signature. Anybody that's highly skilled at Tai Chi, Qigong, healing, has these types of abilities. You know them as clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. Okay? Every single plant and animal alive, even the earth, has chakras. There's a whole field of acupuncture for animals. You may not know that. What Tiller shows us is that we have what are called step-up and step-down transformers. All that means is it takes an extremely high vibration and slows it down. So let me give you an example. Clouds are water moving really fast, right? When the water condenses, it gets heavy and it falls out of the sky. You call it rain. And then when you freeze it, you got ice, it's rock hard. But if you put ice in a pan and heat it up, it'll boil and it'll diffuse back into the atmosphere. So all you're doing is taking something and changing the rate of vibration. Chakras, these energy vortexes, are connected to each of your major adrenal glandular centers. And they take the cosmic energy in from the environment through the chakra and tap it into the appropriate acupuncture meridian, gland, and organ so that it can be decoded and you can actually have that experience. Okay? Now, what I want you to get from this diagram is that it's a two-way street. The universe doesn't just do you. Step up and step down. Step down means you take information in from the universe and slow it down into your reality. When you're looking at me right now, all you're doing is taking light in and converting it into a message that shows you a picture of me standing here. So you're taking something that's moving at 186,000 miles an hour through the retina, and you're slowing it down to have a still frame picture, and your optical nerve fires 40 times a second. Well, that's a hell of a lot slower than 186,000 miles a second, isn't it? You get that? 40 times a second. I mean, a VHS tape flashes at about 32 frames a second, 25 frames a second, I believe. 32 frames a second if it's power. Okay? So let me show you, so you can understand this, exactly what's going on. Your chakras, those energy wheels I showed you, are like satellite antennas. Your energy field is your mental, emotional, and etheric. Etheric means earth field. The energy from those chakras comes down into the decoder or the descrambler. How many of you have a cable system with a descrambler on it? You ever seen those? You know, you get Cox cable, you get a descrambler, so no one can steal the signal, right? You got a descrambler, it's encrypted. Remember what happened to Ken Kanakin? Why don't you have handouts? Because he accidentally encrypted them. Well, the cosmos encrypts all the signals. Why is it that we're all having different thoughts right now? Because we all have different minds operating at different frequencies. So the universe is talking to each of us, and it's encrypted so that we can get the thought. Now, the more at rest you get and the more skilled you get, the more you can tap into other people's thoughts, because as you evolve, your bandwidth expands, so you can catch more channels. Okay? So the chakra systems are, they bring the consciousness in from the universe, the light, energy, and information in, and it goes into the nerve plexus and the glands, and then it goes into the DVD player. And each organ in your body, if you study Taoism or Chinese medicine or Hinduism, any of the ancient medical systems, and if you ask me, because I do this for a living, I can guarantee you, how many of you have read research, for example, on people that have liver and heart transplants and what happens to them emotionally? Raise your hand. So, Dr. Rokowski, what's one of the things that happens to people that get someone else's heart or someone else's liver? Isn't that interesting? Right? So, and you know who taught us about that about 1,000 years ago? The Taoist monks. They already knew that 1,000 years ago. So what ancient Chinese medicine and many medical systems show is that each one of your organs contains an aspect of your consciousness. For example, the liver is the home of anger. Okay? So whenever you're angry all the time, you're probably going to start having liver stress and liver symptoms. Okay? So then your liver, each of your organs records your experience, and you're the one that tuned into it, don't forget. So what do you see here? You see him holding the channel changer. What do most people do when they sit in front of a TV with that channel changer? Switch channels all the time. Flick, 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 flick. And guess what most of their lives look like? Flick, 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 flick. People say to me all the time, how do you write so much? How have you written all these books? I've produced 60 videos, written 5 books. I got about 3 more on the way. I could go. If you read my resume, they always say to me, how the hell do you do that? I say, I have to learn to not flick. I got to decide what I want to do and energize it with enough life force to make it grow into reality. High performance, folks, is committing to energizing a goal to the point at which it exists in the physical realm. Because when you're running or jumping, it's being measured here, not here. Okay? So the channel changer means, what do I want to focus into? Okay? I'll show you how that one works. So at each level of the human body, there's a chakra that taps into a main issue. The main issue, so remember, 7 years. So from 0 to 7 years of age, your primary lesson is to learn about safety and security and tribal association. Who is my tribe? Who is my parents? And what does it take for me to feel safe? When am I safe? And who is supposed to teach you that? Your parents, your grandparents, your brothers and your sisters. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the foundation for the rest of your life, and about 98% of my patients' problems emanate from what they learned in the first 7 years of their life. I'm almost always having to go back and do work to help them understand experiences from the first 7 years of their life, because they learned about safety and security and tribal association at that time. Today, we don't go hunting, so where do you get your primary sense of security for? Can I pay the mortgage? Can I pay the rent? Can I feed myself? Can I afford a vacation? So your financial stability is tapped directly into what you learned in the first 7 years of your life. And let me tell you something. You don't have a drug strong enough. You don't have a coach good enough to make an athlete perform to their potential that has problems about his own safety and security. Especially if they themselves aren't ready to take on the responsibility of being a champion, because when you're a champion, you're automatically perceived as a leader. So anyone that has problems in the first 7 years of their life is almost impossible to turn into a champion at a high level. The next 7 years of your life, 7 to 14, is about sexuality and rhythm. Going with the flow in life. Who am I? What's my rhythm? What's the role of a female in society? What's the role of a male in society? And as you go into puberty, you're learning about your sexuality. Anybody that has a problem in there almost always has rhythm problems, emotional problems, and has a lot of challenge with sexual issues or getting along with people, and they just keep throwing monkey wrenches. Have you met people that no matter, every time their life starts going too good, they have to screw it up? You ever met people like that? Maybe you're sitting in one of their bodies. The third level, from 14 to 21, is personal power and self-will. What's my purpose here in life? Why am I here? Who am I? Personal power, self-will. Can I navigate society? Can I navigate life? Can I contribute? What is my contribution? When do most people, if they're on schedule, start getting toward the end of their university training and go out into the world? About the time they're 21 years of age. You finish high school, by the time most people are 21, they're supposed to say, I know what I'm going to do now. And if they don't, it starts to stress them, because it's built into us. Okay? Just like a woman starts getting stressed if she's 36 and hasn't had a kid yet. Unless it's my wife, thank God. Okay? The fourth chakra is all about giving, receiving love. So once you're safe, and once you know who what your sexuality is, and once you know what your contribution is, you got to fall in love with life, because love is the passion that drives you to the accomplishment of any goal. And any worthy goal takes work. Nothing that's easy is worthy. Okay? Your fifth lesson is all about communication. Listening and communicating and creating. So the ears, the mouth, and the throat, and the neck link to the communication issues. So you see people that have temporomandibular joint disorders, problems in the neck, and often problems in the arms and the brachial plexus. Those are all linked to potential communication problems. Finally, from 35 to 42, you're in the creative phase of your life. Now that you know about safety, security, flow and rhythm, personal power, self-will, giving, receiving love, and communicating, you have all the equipment to be a highly effective creator. And that's the age that most people become high-level management in corporations, isn't it? Yes, Paul? I need participation here. I know I'm having a good time. You're supposed to help me out here. Okay, so they spend the rest of their life mastering those things. Now, just so you know, anytime you stop yourself, you stunt the growth of all of these because these imprint themselves into each other. So a problem here will print itself into that one, into that one, into that one. Okay? I hate to tell you this, but the average person today has been shown through extensive psychological research to not grow past what they became by the age of 12. Most of your athletes and most of your clients are exactly who they were developmentally at 12 years of age. To get past 12 years of age today will require effort, and usually requires guidance from someone that knows how to do this. And you can only bring somebody, ladies and gentlemen, to the level of your own development, right? Think of it if you're teaching rock climbing. If you've never climbed an inverted face that only the best rock climbers in the world, are you a really good person to teach other people to climb that? No. So you can only teach people to climb the ladder or the face of life to the level that you yourself can climb it, and the universe typically will send people to you that are slightly below your level or at your level. You usually won't attract higher vibrational people into your life for very long because their energy will be sucked into you. So like always attracts like. You'll see that the great healers and rishis and mahatmas and gurus typically go hide in the mountains because it takes so much of their energy to be around people that they need recharge time. So here is a very complex diagram that I teach my students, and this is there's a one-day lecture, a whole day on this diagram in level 3 of the CHEK program, because by then they've had a number of clients that aren't getting better or aren't achieving their performance levels, and I have to show them why. So here, look carefully, because I don't have a lot of time, so I want to give you a lot of information quickly. Each of these correlates to the level of the chakras we've just went through. These animals represent a positive decision with any challenge you face, and those mean you made the wrong decision. So you stole money from somebody, or you had sex with someone that you knew you shouldn't for whatever reason, or you are making your way at work by walking on other people's heads or being disrespectful, or you're a pathological lover, or you lie to people, and or you are creating what you don't want in your life. You're not a white witch, you're not a good genie, you're a black witch. Okay? Or spiritually, you think Jesus martyred himself so that you should spend the rest of your life being hung as well. Okay? On the other side is all the positive choices. So anytime you consistently make positive choices, you increase your vibrational rate and you attract the right people to you to be challenged at the next level in life. It's just a fact. Okay? So you see, this is Babaji here, and he's holding his right hand up and his left hand down. He says, as a human being, you're in a field of time and relativity. You are half cosmic, half levity, half earth being. You're half animal and half earth. And as a creative being, an emanation of the Godhead, you are given the power of choice, which means at any moment you could always choose to do the optimal thing or the suboptimal thing. Now watch carefully. I'm going to show you why a lot of athletes don't achieve their potential. And why a lot of human beings don't achieve their potential. You see this triangle here? That shows you the approximate percentage of the human population that's evolved to that level. So when you get up to the top, you got people like Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, avatars. Muhammad, the founders of the world great religions. Okay? But what happened to most of them? These people said, we don't like you because if what you're saying is true, my life's going to suck because I can't go doing what I want to do. I got to give up all my lying and cheating and stealing and screwing. So we got a simple solution. I'm going to kill your ass. Okay? So they staple them up. Okay? And they say, that's what you get when you get in the way of my oil field. You get that one? Okay? So, now, watch carefully. See that triangle? That's the one that stops people. That is the relative level of responsibility that goes with the evolution to each higher phase of development. The cosmos, your fellow human beings, higher spiritual beings, if you want to go that far, expect you to perform and to bear that on your shoulders. That's why very few people get to that level. The percentage of the population that gets to that level is inverted. So this shows you very few people ever get there. And the reason is because the responsibility is of a massive magnitude. And a lot of people aren't ready to give up their shit. And it's not our job to force them to. My job as a practitioner, as a holistic health practitioner, is just to show you the model and say, this is the game board, and baby, you're in it. No matter what, I don't care what you say, you're in it. And you are a thinking, creating being, and you absolutely control your own destiny, and that's the game. And every time you evolve, you are pulling people up with you. If any one of us improves our energetic state in this room, it elevates the energy of everyone else. If anyone lowers it, it lowers everyone else. That's absolutely scientifically proven. Study the research of heart math. They did very interesting research where they put an electroencephalogram on people and an electrocardiogram on people at the same time, and guess what they found? Whenever two people get together, whichever one is the healthiest, their heart rate shows up in the electroencephalogram of the other person. They showed that the healthiest, strongest people always immediately begin to entrain the weaker people. Humanity is here to help each other, and no matter what the hell you believe, you might think I'm absolutely friggin' nuts, but the fact of it is scientifically proven that every one of you right now, the strongest of you in the room, are bleeding your energy off into the weakest, because that is the whole purpose of being here, is to learn how to work together as a unified group of spiritual beings that realize they're just cruising around in an animal body. Most people want to forget about the spiritual stuff and just say, life sucks, life is doing me. Right? But that ain't the facts. The facts are you're doing life and you're controlling it, and there's people always around you, and that's why in martial arts they say, and in spiritual development they say, when the student is ready, the master always appears. There's always people there to help you at every step of the way. Okay? Now, I've only got a few minutes left, so I want to show you. I teach my students that the body is broken into 4 key systems: sense man, metabolism man, limb man, and rhythm man, which is a concept I borrowed and expanded from Rudolf Steiner. Sense man is what integrates the mind into the body. So your senses take all your emotions and all your thoughts and pass them into the body. So all your biological functions are first influenced by your thoughts. The number 1 cause of leaky gut syndrome is what? Stress. What is stress? A perception. Right? If somebody walked in here with a gun right now and said, give me your money, most of you would probably about shit your pants if they started spraying bullets around in here. But those of us that have military training would immediately begin problem solving, because we've already had experience with people spraying bullets around and acting like idiots. Right? So I wouldn't poop my pants, but I would say, what's the best thing that I can do now? And I'd immediately look around the room to get eye contact with any of the men or women in the room that were main maintaining what we call our military baron, because those are the people I immediately must unify with to save the rest of you. Okay? Stress is a perception. Remember that. So rhythm, man, you have 3 key biological oscillators in the body: the brain, the heart, and the intestinal tract. They all produce electrical frequencies. Research shows that in the healthy body, you can study heart mass research. If you take the resting respiratory rate and divide it into the resting heart rate, it should be a whole number. So if your heart rate is 60 and you're breathing 12 times a minute, you're going to get 5. They found that in the unhealthy, stressed bodies, they got fractionated numbers. So if your heart rate's 67 and you're breathing 12 times a minute, you're going to get 5 point something. That's an indicator of an engine that's running out of tune, so a car that shakes. Remember, we are driven by earthly, solar, and lunar rhythms, and then our secondary influences of the astrological frequencies coming from the constellations. That's what the field of astronomy or astrology is all about. But the primary influences on us are our annual rhythms, our circadian rhythms, and our lunar rhythms. And those influences we can either live with or live against. I'll show you ways you can live against them and get yourself in trouble. But what I want to show you with regard to high performance is the more unhealthy somebody gets, the more animalized they become. So you go backwards in your biological evolution. Everything below the diaphragm is linked most effectively to our animal ancestry. There's not a lot of conscious thought and there's not a lot of emotion down there. That's why they call it vegetative function. Okay? So the more stressed anybody is, the more alligator-like they become and the more focused on themselves they become, because they know they're potentially going to die. So they start becoming very self-centered as a means of surviving. But if people were taught to behave that way as children, they don't even know they're doing it, and they live their lives like that, and they can't figure out why they cannot ever get chosen or promoted to a managerial position, why they can't ever become coach at a national or a regional level, because everyone around them already knows they're stuck. But most people don't have the kahunas to say, listen, Bob, the reason you're not getting promoted is because you're a self-centered son of a bitch. And you need to learn how to work with people, right? But that's part of their own development, because remember, we always attract the people to us that we need to grow with. Whenever you start energizing yourself and getting your biological oscillators to move together, you become more like the chimpanzee, which is called a neo-mammal. So if you study the work of Paul MacLean, now you become, your emotional intelligence begins to improve. So now you start thinking about other people. And when you are healthy enough that your cup runneth over and you're in an open loop and you truly love what you do, you transcend. And now you become more of the angelic being or the spiritual being that's riding around in your body. And all of your choices and what is stressful is based on a perception. So the question is, what color are your glasses? If you see the world as red, then you're always going to be stuck down here. If you see it as blue, you're in a transcendent mode, and you will learn to see stress for what it is and make better decisions. Stress is nothing but an offering. When you disrupt your sleep-wake cycles, when you start screwing with the sun, the moon, and the earth, as I wrote an article called The Absolute Essence of Periodization, and I showed all these coaches worrying about meso and microcycles, but when I go to work on professional sports teams, almost always they're screwing up the circadian cycle. What's the point of doing meso and microcycle periodization if your athletes are staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning watching late night TV and having shots of espresso at the bar at 1 o'clock in the morning, behaving like absolute idiots, yet they say they're trying to win the NBA or the Stanley Cup? Right? Well, that is a strength coach screw up. And guess what? Guess who's usually at the bar with them? Right? Like attracts like. More of the same plus more of the same equals more of the same. You can only lead to the level that you're at. Don't even worry about mesocycles and macrocycles until you get the 24-hour rhythm right, or you're piston in the wind and charging people for it. That's karmic. You deserve each other. Okay? So once you are in tune with the cycles that created us, could any of you be here if the sun wasn't here? Could any of you be here if the earth wasn't here? Would we men love it if the moon would disappear? Right? So those rhythms are, your cortisol rhythm's driven by the sun. Your stress hormones are sun driven. So you better learn to master these extraterrestrial and terrestrial rhythms, or all your fancy goals and coaching goes out the window. And I show you in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, that as your stress hormones go up, your anabolic hormones go down. So if you don't learn to manage your stress, and listen carefully, manage yourself, not yourself, manage yourself. No one can manage you. You're not little babies. We're not babies anymore. We got to manage ourselves. So if your life is stressful because you keep looking through red glasses and having screwy relationships and have financial troubles and keep reliving your parents' legacy, you got a choice. Move beyond your parents, and if they were good parents, match up to them. But the more stressed you are for any reason whatsoever, the less anabolic you are. Okay? I show you this picture of me deadlifting at night. You can see the lights on in my gym. The reason is you've got to be really careful, because when a person's body is healthy and their adrenals work well, if you do heavy training at night after about, you start running a risk after about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you start doing any kind of heavy bodybuilding or weightlifting, you'll elevate your cortisol levels so high, it'll disrupt your sleep cycles. And it'll disrupt your neurological and physical growth and repair cycles, and disrupt your release of melatonin, growth hormone, DHEA. All of your anabolic hormones get pushed backwards. It's almost like you just flew to New York or something. So if I'm in the gym at 6 o'clock at night, by the time I unwind from that, if my hormonal system works, I can't wind down. So what do people do? They got to go home and have wind down time. They just can't relax and go to bed. So they go to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. They can't figure out why they're tired all the time. Then they can't figure out why they got a friggin' bag full of pills, powders, and straps and wraps. I watch guys come in the gym to lift weights. It takes them 20 bloody minutes to wrap all the shit on their body. They got every powder and every cream known to man. That's just bad training. That's someone who spent a lot of money on a fancy training program but screwed up the most primary cycles there are. Okay? So I have to teach people how to use exercises like Tai Chi, Qigong, and yoga, which are all ancient systems of healing that are designed, by the way, to synchronize biological oscillators and improve your ability to cultivate Qi. Your diet is your primary source of Qi. If you eat a bunch of shit, you stress your body. When your food takes more energy out of your body and more nutrition out of your body than it delivers, you automatically throw off your biological oscillators. So sense man is the nervous system, rhythm man is your biological oscillators and your exercise. Metabolism man is all the organs of digestion and elimination in your solar plexus, and limb man is you moving and pumping the body, lymphatic fluid, blood, removing waste. Only 6% of all the food eaten in the world is organic or grown based on the principles that I lectured on yesterday. Only 6%. 85% of Americans are on prescription drugs right now, over 3 billion prescriptions written a year right now, and only 3% of men and 8% of women do any regularly scheduled exercise, including walking a dog. Okay? Now remember, your spiritual, mental, and emotional health always moves exactly with your body. You can only be as healthy at a higher level vibrationally than you are physically. Guess why? Your body does not have any mechanism for lying. I don't care what someone says to me as my client. Oh, I get to blah, blah, blah. All I got to do is look at their body. Your body has no mechanism for lying. You wear your truth. You wear your truth to me. My students freak out when they get to level 4, and I show them what I can tell about them. Then they go, holy shit, this is scary. And I go, yeah, that's your job. The reason you can't do it is because you're so clogged up, you can't see through the shit inside your bodies. Okay? These guys get together and think it's cool to have a big belly. Yeah? And I bet you their sphincters haven't opened up in months. Okay? Well, it might interest you to know that some of the strongest men that ever lived existed before steroid drugs and before all these canned performance, whatever you call them. Okay? So all you got to do is study the history of weightlifting, and you'll see that we don't have nearly the species of men walking around. If you study the sperm counts of the average male, the average American male right now is down to 20 million sperms per ejaculation. In 1938, the average American male had 139 million sperms per ejaculation, right? Ladies and gentlemen, in case you didn't know, your sperm count is a measure of your life force. Why do you think Viagra is selling so well? Why do you think in vitro fertilization is a booming business? I'll tell you why. That. They call that performance. Well, if you call a limp dick performance, keep it up. The 4 doctors, I know I'm about to run, I'm running slightly bit overtime here. I'm going to just take 5 minutes. I want to tell you, I want to introduce you to your doctors. There are 4 doctors, and they're your doctors, and they're in you. And if you don't master these 4 doctors, no doctor can help you. You remember in the beginning of the conference when he brought the 4, he gave you the list of chiropractors that had won the award here at SWIS? You remember that? Ken brought them up, and then he gave another guy an award. I know some of those doctors, and you know what's unique about them? I know Michael Hartle. Is he here? Michael? No? I know several of those men, and I'll tell you what's unique about them. I also knew some of the men up on stage. They share. They learn, they grow, and they communicate with each other. They're interested in keeping a Gnostic philosophy. A Gnostic philosophy is an open philosophy. Okay? You have to master your own doctor. And you can't get anything from another doctor that you can't get from yourself. So just like good doctors share and learn from each other, like the men that were on stage, you have to be a willing learner as your own doctor. So when a patient comes to me, I say, are you ready to be your own doctor? Are you ready to take responsibility for yourself? Because I am not going to treat you. To treat someone means you render service. They want to sell you their problems, right? If I treat you to dinner, I'm buying, right? So when patients come for treatment, they automatically come thinking they're going to sell you their trouble, they're going to lay on the table, and that you're going to take it away. They want to sell psychologists their emotional problems. They want to sell psychiatrists everything and just bury it in drugs. They want to sell surgeons their cancer, cut it out so I can keep living like an idiot. Okay? The reality of it is that you have to own your doctors. The first doctor is Dr. Happiness. If you don't have a spiritual life, if you don't have an inner life, if you don't have your own goals, if you don't have something going on in your own mind that you own, then you're a vacuum for everybody else's shit. You will be like the average American. Do you know what the average American watches for television a day? 4.7 hours. How in the hell does someone watch 4.7 hours of television a day? I can hardly find time to wipe my ass. I gotta schedule a piss in. Why? Because I'm in love with my work, and I can't. My wife will verify. If I could go without sleep, by golly, I would, because I enjoy my work a lot more than I enjoy sleeping. You need to have an inner life of your own. You have to have goals. You have to have commitment. You've got to be about something, or you are nothing but a satellite dish for everyone else's shit. And that's how most people live. And what are the most popular damn shows on television? Bloody reality television. Watching people act like fucking idiots. Okay, so the reality of it is you tune into mind, and you have to have condition yourself, you have to have motive, you have to have choice, and you have to have self-realization. You can get arrested and act like an idiot, or you can be an award winner. That's me and my mother. And my mother is responsible for most of my programming. I took it from where she left off. That's this Dalai Lama, that's Mother Teresa, and that's Chief Joseph. My mother is a world-recognized sculptor. My office is full of sculptures. If you want to see her sculptures, they're beautiful. Go to the website humanitariansculpture.com. But I just show you that what I've learned came first from my mother. And not every one of us had that benefit. My father died when I was 8, so my mother primarily raised me. But the point is that I had to take everything I could get from my mother and I had to decide to do what I could do on my own from there. We all have that decision. Raise your hand if you want to be just like your parents. Okay? Well, we got like 4 hands, so that means we got some work to do. The one of you that raise your hands, it means you got great models and you should hang around them and listen to them. But at some point, you will need to pass them, or you'll stagnate. The rest of you that didn't raise your hand, that means you have to get busy and plot your own course. Okay? Dr. Quiet, you have got to schedule time for introspection. Dr. Diet, we've talked about. Dr. Movement, you know what the best exercise in the world is? It's the one you'll do regularly. Your consciousness of what you see as real in the world is a combined reality of your conditioned beliefs, your external environment, your internal environment, and your perception. What do you perceive? Whenever you're perceiving anything, you're looking through what you eat and your organs and your hormones. You bring the external environment. Whenever you eat any of this processed crap, you're bringing that vibration and that reality. Remember, all that's on a cassette tape or a CD is just vibrational signals. Whenever you're eating anything, you're eating the message that it carries in it. So if your diet, you basically just look at your diet and say, is that what I want to be? Right? What is the message I'm getting from that? If you just think white sugar, when you put it in your mouth, what does it do to you? It races you up. Right? Doesn't make you more intelligent, just makes you go like hell. And what goes up must come down. So your external environment, your work, your family, your friends, your living room, everything, and your food is brought into your body through your senses, and it merges with your internal environment, your nervous system, your circulatory system, your organs, your muscles, your joints. And your conditioned beliefs are imprinted into that, and then your perception is created out of those realities, and the way you live, the way you eat, and the way you breathe determines. And if you get stuck in a bunch of dogmatic religious ideas, or you're stuck in front of the television and you look just like that, and that's what most of my patients look like. Remember, I showed you one yesterday, and I showed you what happened when she tuned herself up. Okay? So we got all sorts of people and all sorts of religions. We got religions that focus on the past. The Bible's a 2,000-year-old manual, so if that's your guidebook, you're stuck in the past and you're closed. Or you're likely to be closed. Then you got people that'll kill you tomorrow because they think that their life begins in the future, don't they? Or maybe there's people that aren't necessarily going to kill you, but their religion is based on sacrifice now to get to where? Heaven. That's living in the future. Hey, I got news for you, folks. You're it. The creative potential of the universe, the thing you call God, steps itself down right through your chakras, right here, right now. And there are people out there right now showing you what you can mature to be. Now, I'm not saying, you know, some of you super duper power lifters and bench pressers probably think he's a fag or something. But you can be a strong man and be a spiritual man too. We're always teaching. Okay? So you have to ask yourself, are you training or are you draining? Okay? Are you training or are you draining? And when I say that, I mean that. Here's one of my clients right there. I'm very proud of this man. Mike Madonna came to me and we went through a lot of heavy-duty stuff. He's a warrior. He's the real deal. We work through shit that most people run and hide from together. And I'm telling you, that's a real athlete. And he committed to it, and we continue to work together today. And I have lots more just like him. I could sit here and rattle off names, but it's not my job drop names. My point is that we all have a choice. And whenever you want to move forward, it takes training and it takes a willingness to learn. Okay? And remember I said, as above, so below. So if you're full of shit down below, you're full of shit above too. Stress is an accumulative factor. Stress accumulates in your body, it summates. All stressors, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, summate in your body. And the more stress you have, the less tolerance for exercise you have, and the closer to death that you are. We must learn to manage our communications, our relationships, our finances, our children, etc. It's all our stuff, and it's all there to give us training to become what we really want to be. That's your choice. In the musculoskeletal system, the body shares its stress. It's always seeking homeostasis. But if you have a lousy relationship with your boss, that's a limbic emotional stress. And if you can't take it, it'll overload your hormonal system, your visceral system, or your musculoskeletal system, whichever system has the greatest capacity to take the stress, or whichever one is the most facilitated. I tell you this because the more you learn about how the body really works, the more you realize all these spot fixes and rub this and rub that, that's treating the end organ of a problem that usually begins up here as bad decisions. Remember, your physical body feeds on food and water, your emotional body feeds on emotion, and your mental body feeds on thoughts, and your reality is created from high vibration to low vibration. So all high performance conditioning should begin with the mind and include emotional self-management, and that will create the truth, because the body has no mechanism whatsoever for lying. I will quote Rudolf Steiner, who said, "We each take part in three worlds, the physical or material, the soul and spiritual worlds. While we are rooted in the world through material, physical body, we come to flower in the spiritual world through the spiritual self. But the stem, which roots at one end and flowers at the other, is but the soul itself." So in conclusion, when one seeks high performance, regardless of the endeavor, there is no replacement for gnosis, which is knowledge, sharing, and learning from each other. It's unity. For in the physical world, faith should begin where knowledge ends. I'm in a constant personal pursuit to increase my knowledge so that I never have to rely on faith until I really need it. And if there is a God up there, He knows I'm not a lazy sucker, because He's me. He's me and you. Right? So if there's an observation being done, it's you. And I analyze myself and say, I'm committed to learning so that I don't have to guess on people. And before I guess, I have a rule for my students. When in doubt, the phone comes out. Okay, I'll quit right now. So, last comment. Man emerges from the ground substance of the universe. You're it. That's it. You're it. Okay? So, thank you. I'm sorry if I went a little long there, but I think these are important things.
Absolutely.